This is the ultimate 10-minute fight conditioning workout that requires no equipment and will give you the biggest gas tank you'll ever need for your combat sport. Now, there's an interesting dichotomy within the strength and conditioning world. First, we have coaches like myself stating that we shouldn't model our training programs off pure strength sports. For example, powerlifting, weightlifting, we can even lump bodybuilding into that category. But in the same breath, coaches will use a pure endurance sports model to prescribe conditioning to their combat sport athletes. Mainly this will be a high volume approach of low intensity conditioning and then a little bit of high intensity conditioning sprinkled on top. This is based on the polarized method that comes from the endurance training world, where at least 80% of their training is done in those very low training zones. We can say physiology is physiology, which I agree with, but the physiology has to match the sport, and the focus on low intensity conditioning is biasing systemic function, which is typically our delivery of oxygen, which is likely not our limiting factor to performance, as evidenced by the relatively low VO2 max values in combat athletes from every combat sport, and the newer data we have around how the muscle functions. Further, a recent chat on the Sweet Science of Fighting podcast with Dr. John Babray, make sure you check that one out, where he talks about calcium sensitivity. And he mentions that lower intensity conditioning will improve calcium sensitivity, but predominantly in the type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers. Being more sensitive to calcium means we're able to repeatedly produce more force and produce more force for longer. To make it really easy to understand, think of calcium as a switch. We have two protein filaments within the muscle and they have to bind together for our muscles to contract. Calcium is like the switch, is there to uncover the binding site on one protein filament and also act as a switch to quote unquote turn on the other protein filament so they bind together and the muscle can contract. Being more sensitive to calcium means we're able to do this faster and with less of it, which means we're able to contract faster and more forcefully. It also allows that contract relax mechanism that is so important for fast and powerful athletic tasks. And we want this adaptation to occur predominantly in type 2 muscle fibers since they are our fast twitch muscle fibers. Hence why this exact 10-minute fight conditioning workout will get you in the best shape of your life. And the best thing is you don't need any equipment to do it. And so this is for those of you who don't have access to any stationary bikes, air bikes, or anything else in a gym, so you're able to do this on your own. So we're gonna defer to some of the research on this particular modality. So again, as always, on my computer, we're gonna look at this paper first. And this is all on hill sprints. Now you might think hill sprints, we all know what hill sprints are and how to do them. I'm gonna give you some more specifics on them. So look at this paper, 17 healthy recreationally active men. They did 4 times 30-second all-out hill sprints with 4 minutes active recovery between them. And the hill sprint group got compared to a bike sprint group in this particular instance. And they saw very similar physiological responses and adaptations between the hill sprint and the bike sprint, meaning you can sub one for the other. We can then go into the second paper here on male soccer players, and they did 10 by 10 second hill sprints with 60 seconds recovery on a 7% gradient for 6 weeks. They found improvements in 3K time trial, strength, agility, and yo-yo performance. If you don't know the yo-yo test, it's kind of like a field test for VO2 max that's often used in team sports. And then the final paper was in semi-professional female field hockey players. And they ended up doing 6 to 12 30-meter hill sprints with 1 minute recovery. And they found a significant improvement in total sprint time. So it means a reduction in total sprint time, a reduction in the fastest time, and a reduction in the slowest time, and overall average sprint time. And this ranged from anywhere from 12 to 15%. What you might notice here is the work to rest ratios a little bigger than the traditional bike sprint that we talk about on this channel a lot. There's a couple of reasons for this. One of them, in these studies, John Babray was mentioning that the subjects weren't very well trained, so they had these longer rests in this. But the second one is just logistics. If you're sprinting up a hill, it's going to be near impossible to get back down in 10 to 15 seconds if you've sprinted already 10 plus seconds on the way up. Therefore, longer rest may be needed when you're doing your hill sprints. Second thing to cover with the hill sprints, the steeper the hill, the more intense it's going to be. So you need to find something that isn't too shallow of a gradient, if that makes sense. Should be slightly steeper enough to make you work. Since you're going to be going up and coming back down, you're going to have longer rest periods. You can go by distance or go by time. I think distance is just easier practically because you can go to a certain mark that you've seen on the hill or a landmark and then walk your way down briskly. That distance should allow you to hit around 10 to 30 seconds for the sprint. Then ideally you walk back down as quickly as possible, which should give you around 1 to 2 minutes of rest in between your sprints. Doing this is going to give you a very similar physiological response to doing bike sprints. Now, if you don't have access to hills at all, maybe you live in a very flat area of the world, then you can do 10-meter shuttle sprints. You're looking to get around 8 shuttles at least in about 15 seconds. That is the pace you're looking for. When we're talking about shuttle sprints, we're talking about sprinting 10 meters to a line, quickly changing direction, coming back, quickly changing direction again. This change of direction is what increases the intensity of those 10-meter sprints. If you're lucky enough to have a very long hill, you can do the shorter rest periods and do the exact same protocols that you would do on a bike. For example, if you're doing 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, and you have a long enough hill, you can do your 10-second sprint, stop, walk back just slightly down the hill so you have more room, and then you just go again after the 20 seconds rest. So here's a really simple progression you could use for these hill sprints. 6 by 10-second sprints with 60 seconds rest. You could do that twice a week. You could then progress to 8 sets the following week, 10 sets and 12 sets. Depending if you want to then focus on more speed-based work or more quote unquote say endurance-based work, you can shorten that down and do 6-second sprints with slightly more recovery, or you can extend that out to 20 or 30 seconds with a 1:2 to 1:4 work to rest ratio. This way you can get the benefits of sprint interval training without having any equipment. These sessions will take you around 10 minutes or slightly longer, but they're not going to be 30-minute, 60-minute grueling sessions. They're going to take too much out of you. If you want a full breakdown of sprint interval training, make sure you check out this video after, and also check the description. We have the conditioning mentorship that is opening its doors in June. We are currently selling spots. We're almost halfway through those spots. Last time we sold out before they finished. So make sure you check those out, and I'll catch you in the next video.